ensure that your child receives the best education possible. Good afternoon, classmates. My name is Victoria Ferguson, and after listening to my speech today, you will agree that children who receive an education in a private or parochial school will obtain a better education than those in the public school system. This topic is of great importance to me because I intend to have children one day, and I want to ensure that they receive the best education possible. Education is important to all of us. Our children are the future, and if we don't ensure that they receive a quality education, our future doesn't look so bright. Children who attend public schools perform far below their grade level expectations. Parents who want to ensure that their children are meeting or exceeding grade level expectations should seriously consider private schooling. The public school system as it is today is failing our children. Children are not meeting the grade level requirements. As stated in the movie Waiting for Superman by Davis Guggenheim, only 34% of students in Virginia are proficient in reading, with an even lower percentage of 12% in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. A major contributor to the lack of success in our classrooms is the fact that most classrooms in public schools are overcrowded. Smaller classes have proven to create closer working relationships between teachers and students. In the average public school, there are 15.6 students to each one teacher. In private school, there are 13.2 students to each teacher. Larger class sizes are making teachers burnt out more easily. The more students a teacher has in a classroom, the more likely students are to get less attention and are more likely to fall between the cracks and fall behind. Another major concern of the public school system are that some teachers are incompetent and lack motivation. In some cases, the problem is that teachers are not qualified to do the job that tenure has ensured they cannot lose. With different teachers' unions and teachers' associations, the school system has become more about protecting the teachers rather than protecting and teaching the students. Many have attempted to reform the public school system, but so far none have been successful. Children who attend private or parochial schools outperform public school students in every academic area. Private school students produce better grades in writing, history, science, as well as math and reading. Proficiency in math and reading are much better in private school students than in public schools. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, 8th graders in public schools are only 71% proficient in math, whereas in private schools, 85% of students are proficient in math. In the same survey of 8th graders, 74% of public school students were proficient in reading, whereas private school students, 92% were proficient in reading. Part of this is due to the fact that private schools have smaller student-to-teacher ratios. Smaller student-to-teacher ratio allows individualized attention from the instructor. Also, smaller class sizes means that your teacher is less likely to be burned out, and they have more attention and energy to share with the students. Kids are then not just a number in the classroom, but actually a student with a name. Another benefit of private or parochial schools are that they are safer. A study by the National Center of Education Statistics in 2006 showed that 4.3% of children in public schools experience violent victimization at or on the way to or from school, opposed to only 2.6% in private schools. I mean, think about it. All of the bad things that you hear that happen at school, the school shootings, all of those happen at public schools. Columbine, for example, that was a public school. Since 1966, there have been over 120 shootings in public schools, 4 of those being in the state of Virginia. Private school students have an overall better rate of success than their public school counterparts. Students who attend private school are better prepared for college. Private school students have exhibited higher SAT scores than public school students. According to the College Board, for the class of 2010, public school students scored an average of 498 on the critical reading section of the test, whereas private school students scored 533. Also, 511 is the average score for math in public school students, whereas 534 is the average score for private school math students. Another more important benefit of private schools are that they reinforce the moral and ethical values that you try to teach your children at home. I know there are several instances where children come home and they say or do things and their parents look at them like, where did you learn that? We don't talk that way or act that way here in our home. And a lot of the time, they're picking these things up from school. When children are in public schools, they meet other children from different neighborhoods, different walks of life, different family backgrounds that may have different values than your own. When they're meeting these children and interacting with these children, they're picking up some of their behaviors and some of their habits, and not all of those are good behaviors. Whereas when your children attend a private school, a lot of these schools are religious-based and can serve as an extension of the home. In the school, they're teaching your children the same morals and the same values that you teach them at home, and they help reinforce them throughout the day. They're around students who are brought up in the same kind of beliefs, and they're less likely to run into bad behaviors that you wouldn't want them to be exhibiting. But more importantly, private schools narrow the gap between majority and minority education. A lot of the time, children who live in low-income households or neighborhoods tend to have to go to the schools in those neighborhoods, and those schools are not always the best of schools. Whereas more affluent families who live in better neighborhoods get to send their children to better schools, and sometimes, more than likely, they end up getting a better education. Sending your children to private school narrows that gap because no matter where your children live, they can still get a good education at a private or a parochial school. And it gives them the same advantage that a student living in a more affluent neighborhood would have. As a parent, it is your duty to see to it that your child is receiving the tools they need to succeed in life. It is time for you to evaluate what your children are learning. If you have children in the public school system, I challenge you to ask them when they return home from school, what did you learn today? If your child cannot tell you a few things that they did in school, then maybe it's time to evaluate what your children are learning, or if they're learning at all. Education in America has declined over the past 30 years. The current public school system is failing our children. But if you want to ensure that your children are achieving educational success, then I urge you to consider enrolling them in a private or parochial school. If we don't take our kids' education into our own hands, then we are setting them up for failure. We all want the best in life for our children. We want them to grow into happy, well-rounded, and well-educated adults. So again, I ask you, what is your child's education worth to you? Thank you.
Grandma, turn it off. No, that was it. That was it. Yes, thank you.